Good evening, everybody, and welcome to b.hive Productions Apocalypse Hump Day. And we are on the final night of the zombie saga. And we will be, we are going to be reading the sequel to Zechariah 14:12. It's a short story I wrote in 2016, and it comes right out of this book here. Nyctophobia published that in 2016, and basically it's a follow-up on what happened with the Emerson kids and the mom and Hank Doble, who drove them out of there in a tank. So it's written in Diary and by Kathryn Emerson. Obviously that's the title of the book, of the story. Good evening, Kevin. How you doing, brother? I got another nightmare for you. So Stephanie was going to read for us tonight, but work is kicking her butt, and she has life going on. So, hey, Dwayne, good to see you, buddy. So you are stuck with me reading this for you. So I will try to be as, hey, how's it going, Shannon? Nice to have you back. Yeah, so I'll try to talk as girly as I can. It should be hard, right? All right. So, anyhow, I've got a link right here during this live broadcast. If you want to purchase this book, it is a compilation of horror stories. I got about 7 in them in this one. One's called Backroads. Another one's called Lights in the Sky. The other one's Lucifer's Parade. Mr. Matthews Checks Out. Kelso's Pump and Go. Running Alone. And the story tonight is The Diary of Kathryn Emerson. So, if you're wondering, so Zechariah 14:12. Hey, Chuck, you brought the Badgers. Good to have you back, man. The whole Zechariah was took place in a town called Fair Lakes, Minnesota, which was modeled after Fairmont, Minnesota, when I lived out there. And I was raising kids and stuff, and I was married, and basically, so now this one, the sequel takes place up near Fulda, Minnesota, which is where our crew ended up. So. It's a bit of a long one, so without further ado, I'm going to jump right into the story. All right. The Diary of Kathryn Emerson. This is originally going to be a prequel to my zombie novel, Zechariah 14:12, Humanity's Last Stand. After researching for that story, I found that the source material is so ungodly large that it needs to be its own novel, which will be titled Jeremiah 19:9 in the beginning. And yes, I am working on that one as well. And I didn't know how to tell it, so I reread Zechariah, the last chapter, and decided that this was going to be told by our former hero's youngest daughter, Kathryn, who barely had a voice in the first book. April 24th, Hillmont Island, Minnesota. So today is my 14th birthday. We didn't celebrate my birthday the last 2 years because we've been too busy trying to survive. If this were a perfect world and things were like they used to be, Mom and Dad would have a picnic shelter rented out at Gibbous Lake in my hometown of Fair Lakes. All my friends would be there playing games, swimming, talking about boys. Dad would be grilling those delicious Len burgers, and Mom would be setting up a piñata. Wood duck taste, that's right. Our dog, Jack, would be chasing us around the park with a large stick in his mouth. We'd eat and then open presents. Nana would be snapping photos like a maniac and telling me to open her present first. We'd eat cake with a photo of Justin Bieber in the frosting, and we'd end up having a big cake fight, giving Dad a heart attack. But that was before the R.A.C V hit the world, turning our world into something like out of a horror movie Dad used to watch with me. He's gone now. Hank Doble had to shoot him in the head. Mom said he was infected. I don't know if I believe that. He was the strongest man I know and knew how to get out of any problem that life threw at him. It is because of Dad that my sister Leigh and I made it through the beginning of the outbreak. Nana is gone too. I had to watch her kill herself with a knife because she got bit. Only Leigh, Mom, and myself now. Hank got us here to a new safety zone. We rode in a tank. The president ordered nuclear weapons to be dropped on a handful of big cities to help the military fight the deadheads. Airstrikes of napalm were dropped throughout the country as a secondary wave. When we got to Goose Lake, we had to swim to Hillmont Island. We've been here ever since. It is a safe zone. I feel more secure here than I did at the Moon Valley County Fairgrounds and Fair Lakes. There are high fences around the island. Shelters are built up in the trees. It was crowded, and in the beginning, they had to weed out the sick. It was a scary time, seeing families being ripped apart as their infected loved ones were euthanized. Mom, being a nurse, was busy most of the time helping the injured. Having the most medical training, she was also in charge of what she called triage. It's her decision who gets euthanized and who gets treated. That left my sister and I to fend for ourselves most of the time. Leigh can be bossy most of the time and a know-it-all, but since we lost our dad, she's been pretty mellow. There hasn't been any danger from the deadheads. They apparently can't swim. The only danger falls on the scouts who go to the mainland to search for supplies. I'm too young to scout, so I could stay here and help with cooking or taking care of the younger ones. Not really a thrill for me, but there are no Xboxes anymore, no iPods or iPads, no internet as far as I know. But really, I think there has to be, because no one really mans the internet. It's just floating out there in the air, isn't it? Anyhow, even though I didn't expect a party, Mom got me something for my birthday. She must have got it from one of the scouts, but here it is, this notebook. I know it doesn't sound like much, but I've been dying to journal or something since everything went south. So here it is, my first journal entry. And maybe, just maybe, this is going to be the only written record of the zombie apocalypse. Ugh, sounds so cheesy calling it that. Leigh went even further for my birthday. She's a scout now. Has been since her 16th birthday. I was scared for her. She doesn't cope well with stress, even less since Dad died. He was always her rock. But she came back after her first outing. She was changed a bit. Maybe not so much for the good, though. She'd always talked to me before about anything. It was somewhat annoying, but now she hardly says anything. It makes me sad to see her so hard like this. But she must have found basic ingredients to make a cake last time she was out, because this morning she baked me a cake. Just a plain Jane cake with honey for frosting, but the smell was so intoxicating. Some of the other survivors smelled the cake and came over wanting some. I was going to share, but Leigh lost her shit on them. Told them to back the fuck off me. Doble had to come and calm her down, and she broke into tears and ran into our tree hut. Mr. Doble gave me the weirdest gift, but I think it's one of my favorite treasures. He pulled out a blue bandana from his shirt pocket. There was dried bloodstains on it, and I almost thought it was going to be some freak body part from one of the deadheads. Oh, I really did. But he told me it was my father's. The dad had used it as a tourniquet during the fall of the Moon Valley Fairgrounds. He said my dad's tears were also dried into this bandana. He kept the bandana because he said from Vietnam to the oil fields of Kuwait, he had never served with any better man than my dad. It made me cry, because even though it had been in Mr. Doble's pocket all this time, it had a faint hint of Dad's scent in it. His face still burns in my memories. To think about what Dad went through just to get us at Nana's farm, and then to find Mom, and then keep us safe at the same time. Just to end up getting infected anyways, and being shot in the head by your best friend. I think I need to walk away from all this writing for a while. April 30th. Wow, I get all excited about a stupid notebook and say I'm going to write in it every day, and I blow off a week. I'm worried about my sister. She's become very aggressive, not towards me, but towards Mom and everyone else. Mom said she's probably going through something called PTSD. I don't know exactly what that means, but Mom said it's kind of like going nuts because, well, you've seen too many bad things happen. Well, haven't all of us? Leigh has always been pretty sensitive, but I've never seen her get angry like she does. This boy Carlos used to come around a lot wanting to talk to her. He was always really nice to everyone, and they seemed to have a good time together, but the last time he came up to our hut, she put her gun in his face and told him if he ever came around again, she'd shoot his fucking nuts off and laugh as he bled out. Wow, what the fuck? There are no boys here my age. They are either way older or way younger. There are no girls here at my age either, for that matter. Blah. I like to listen to the stories the scouts talk about when they come back. They usually sit up all night bragging about their adventures around a campfire. Sometimes I'm jealous of Leigh being able to go out there off the island. I don't even know what's going on out there. For all I know, the scouts are lying and everything's back to normal. I better go. Mom and Leigh are in another screaming match. May 2nd. Mother's Day. I can't even go shopping for her. I can hear Dad's voice in the back of my head. Kathryn, even making a card for her, making her a little dinner or something, anything. Just show her that you appreciate her. So I had Mr. Doble take me outside the fence, and we went fishing off the beach this morning. If Mom knew I was outside the fence, she'd have a fit. But seeing that I was catching these fish to fry up for Mom, Mr. Doble helped me out. We caught 4 sunfish, a good-sized bass, and 3 crappies. I didn't know how to fillet or fry them up, but he showed me how. It was actually pretty interesting, and the aroma of fish frying over a fire was such a treat. I threw a couple potatoes in, and now I'm going to bring them out to Mom at our makeshift hospital. Wish me luck. May 4th. Ugh. I don't even know how to start this. My mother, who I'm going to start calling her name now, Kris. Well, Kris is a slut. There, I said it. I fucking said it. On Mother's Day, when Leigh and I went to give Kris her dinner and a card we both made at the hospital, she wasn't even there. She was with one of the scouts. His name is Nick or something. It was Mother's Day, and she told us she'd be working. But she was with him. How many nights when she could have been hanging out with us was she with him? When she could have been, when she's supposed to have been, at work. And Daddy died, trying to save her and save us. I hate her. I really fucking hate her. Leigh took it the worst. She attacked Kris. Then she attacked that Nick guy. It was so intense. I thought she was going to kill him. Leigh told Kris to never come back to our hut again. And I really don't care if she ever does, but she did follow us back to the hut. Leigh latched the metal door at the top of the ladder so she couldn't come up. She banged away at the door and hollered up to let her in, but we both went into her hut and ignored her. She eventually left, probably back to her fuck buddy. I did feel a little bad. It's hard for her to climb the ladder with her bad leg, the one she cut off because the R.A.C V was slithering around inside it. But then I thought, she has no problem climbing Nick's ladder, does she? May 7th. Kris is living at the hospital, or so she says, but Leigh has been watching. She spends most of her time in the hospital, but she's also been sleeping at Nick's. It's okay. We've been fending for ourselves most of the time anyways. She's been too busy at the hospital to give a shit about us. Besides, Dad taught us how to survive. He taught us to be brave, and we don't need her. Maybe we should go easy on her. Times have been rough on everybody. It has been 2 years since Dad was killed. She should be able to move on. I guess I'm mad at her because she didn't tell us. It's like she lied to us, telling us she was working when really she was doing things with this Nick guy. I'm worried about tomorrow. It's another scouting mission, and it's Leigh's turn to go out. I've never been completely alone before. I'm not afraid of the deadheads. I'm more afraid of the others who live here. I don't know most of them. Some of them look shady. Some of them look at me weird. Plus, knowing Mom ordered some of their infected loved ones to death, well, I've heard whispers. May 8th. It's night. Leigh is gone. Her boat left at 8 this morning. I've done village chores most of the day, but dinner, and now, alone. I locked the door to the ladder so no one can get up here. Just in time, too, because they came. A group of about 20. They had baseball bats. Some even had knives, and they were calling up to me, calling me names, telling me that since my mom had their family killed, they were going to kill her family. They're banging away at the hatch leading to the catwalk to our tree hut. I tried to stay quiet, but I couldn't. I thought they were going to make it appear to me. What am I going to do? Leigh had all the guns. I didn't even have a knife. I wish my mom was here. I wish Dad was here. I wish Mr. Doble was here. They're shouting that they're going to burn the trees down if I don't come out. Where's my mom? Oh my God. They're throwing torches up here. I have to go. I have to get rid of these torches before they... May 10th. They killed her. They killed my mom. She ran to the hut to see what all the noise was about up here, and someone impaled her with a spear. The crowd got ravenous and just... They ripped her apart. Literally. They tore her limb from limb. When they finished, they looked up at me and smiled. They fucking smiled at me. My mother laid there below our hut in pieces. They fucking smiled at me. Leigh should be here soon. They only do 24-hour missions. She'll be here and Mr. Doble will be here, and then there'll be some fucking justice. I'm sure Mom's fuck buddy Nick won't be all too happy either when he gets back. Fuckers. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry you died like that. I'm sorry we were so mean to you. May 11th. They're not back yet. Something's wrong. Something happened. May 12th. Still nothing. I won't leave the hut. I can't. Mom is still down there in pieces. She's beginning to smell. I've got food and water. I hope Leigh comes back soon. I'm scared. May 13th. The camp is quiet. The scouts aren't back yet. I can only think the worst has happened. The smell is horrible. I had to use a bucket to go to the bathroom, and I dumped it over the railings. That, mixed with the smell of Mom rotting out there, is unbearable. Where the fuck are you, Leigh? May 14th. I tried to sneak down last night. I was going to climb the fence and take a boat to the mainland and try to find everybody. But as I got to the top of the fence, I saw 3 boats. I thought it was Leigh and the rest of the scouts, but the lead boat stopped just short of the shoreline and dropped a group of about 15 deadheads. They came back down and watched, or I came back down and watched as they shambled their way to the shore. They started banging against a fence. It alerted one of the guards, and people started waking up and coming to the fence. I hid in the bushes watching as the boats went around to the other side of the island. Our people started jabbing at the infected with spears and killing a few of them. I had almost forgotten what those things looked and smelled like. It was horrible. Since there was less human beings around, the deadheads were beginning to liquefy from lack of food. They moved slower. Mr. Doble said that he heard reports about the deadheads and how the R.A.C V fed on its host, which is why the infected had to feed on living tissue to survive. If the infected didn't get food, then their bodies started to break down as the virus devoured its host. While the people were busy, I ran back here to the safety of my hut. But I still wonder where those boats were going. Why would they drop off a boatload of deadheads here? May 15th. Gunshots, screaming, then silence. I don't know what's happening down there, but I'm going to stay hidden. May 20th. They were another group, mostly young. They looked like they would have been in high school when the outbreak happened. Now they're just teens in adult bodies. They took over our island. They released the deadheads to see what kind of weapons we had. There were only a few guns held by guards, and they were killed first. The rest of us had primitive melee weapons, but they had all kinds of guns, and we quickly surrendered. They killed our weak. Most of the group that killed my mother were dead. Some of them lived, and I made sure to keep my eyes out for them. Most of us, me included, gave up on our scouts ever coming back. I am truly alone now. I'm able to keep the hut, but they took all my food and water. They keep all our supplies in the larger hut, which their leader stays in with his girlfriend. They ration our supplies to us depending on the work we do. Really, it depends on what mood they're in. I still do the community cooking. I help in the garden. I watch the kids. There's no more hospital. The new people killed everyone who was sick or wounded and put them in a boat, soaked them in what was left of our kerosene, and lit them on fire and set them out on the water. June 3rd. Tonight, one of those new boys came up to the hut. It was late. He tried to put his hands on me. He held me down and kissed me, but I didn't kiss him back. I bit his cheek and scratched his eyes. Leigh taught me that. I know I'll probably pay for that tomorrow. June 4th. So they made me a soldier. It's their version of a scout. The leader was impressed how I handled myself with Pete. Said the ferocity like mine was being wasted over the stove and in the garden, and I should be out getting supplies. I'm not sure if that's a promotion or punishment, but if I can get on the mainland, I can look for Leigh. It worries me that there are still deadheads around, though. I thought they'd mostly be gone since all the bombing and lack of food. But I guess that would make them more desperate, too. The ones they dropped here looked horrible. They gave me a gun, a 1911, 2 magazines of ammo, and they sent me out on the beach to target shoot with one of the other guys. His name was Kent, typical douchebag jock, pompous, full of himself, and thought I was gaga over him because he was God's gift. Yuck. Thought I'd play my cards right, pretended to be the stupid, shallow female he thought I was. Pretended I didn't know how to handle a gun. I was just a hopeless damsel in distress. He told me I'd be ready for a supply run in 2 days. June 6th. Early morning. I'm ready. Nervous as hell, but ready. I have the gun they gave me, a knife, and I was given 32 rounds for the 9mm. Heading to the boat in a sec. Just wanted to write this down because it all seems so surreal. I read back a few entries and things have changed so dramatically, so quickly. And we just accepted it, adapt and move on like it's normal. Is it? I'm bringing the notebook with. Write more tonight. Late evening, Talcott, Minnesota. They stuck me in a group with the 4 remaining people who killed my mother. The only one from the new group was our leader, Ken. They were watching me, and I was watching them. I knew I was going to end these fuckers that took my family from me before this mission ended. They had trucks hidden in the bushes on the mainland. We rode into town called Talcott. There isn't much there, just a convenience store, a grain elevator, and a bar. There were bodies littered everywhere, but they were long dead. I was looking for Leigh or anyone else from our scouting party, but they weren't around. We went through all the buildings on Main Street, homes and businesses. Going through the houses was sad, looking at people's lives that lived here, family photos, clothes, letters. I can't even remember what my house looked like, or even my old bedroom. I remember bits and pieces of our swing set, pieces of furniture, but not my room, or the rooms that housed the family. I remember some of my old toys, my stuffed animals. We loaded the trucks as we gathered supplies. No deadheads, no other humans. We moved out into the country, so the farms. Fields were overgrown with grass, and some of the corn had come back in splotchy patches. I walked out to the field to pick some of that corn, and that's when I ran into a group of deadheads. They surprised me. I'd forgot that they go into a sort of dormant state when there isn't food around. They started coming at me from everywhere. I didn't scream. I shot 5 of them square in the forehead. I tripped over some tall grass my foot had gotten tangled in, and the gun fell from my hand. My skin crawled as I heard their desperate gurgling cries, hungry for the meal I brought to them. It grew louder as they gathered around me. I was searching for my gun while trying to get to my feet. A skeletal hand grabbed my upper arm, and the sharp, bony fingers dug into my shirt, trying to pierce my skin. Bullets ripped past me and shattered the deadhead's skull. More bullets whizzed past me, cutting through the tall grass and puncturing the faces and heads of the growing crowd of infected. I ran out of there onto the gravel driveway of the farm. Lots of badgers, Chuck. We need lots of badgers. I ran out there onto the gravel driveway of the farm. Those things were crawling out of the corn as my group was shooting furiously at the undead crowd, my gun sitting somewhere in the cornfield. Ken told us to save our ammo and make a break for the house. I told him we'd be better off in the barn. It had a loft and those things couldn't climb. I remember that from when Nana, Leigh, and I had escaped at Nana's house. Ken ran into the house anyways. He brought three of our group with him. 2 came with me. They were the ones that were in the group that ripped apart my mother. So here we are, still in the barn. We're up in the hayloft. The deadheads got through the barn door pretty easy. It was old rotted wood, and their sheer weight splintered it. But they can't get to us. Well, somehow I got to sleep, between listening to those grotesque snarls down there and knowing that the people who brutally murdered my mother are lying near me. I'll get through this. I'll get my revenge. I'll get out of this mess. But I need sleep. Something I haven't been able to do in a while. June 8th. I did it. I was able to take one of their guns while they slept, and I shot both of them in the lower back. Shattered their spine from the waist down. It made it easy to push them from the loft. I stood there for a brief moment and watched them get torn apart like they tore apart my mother. But it didn't feel good. To know I ended 2 lives, I could have just shot them in the head and made it quick, but I didn't. I didn't on purpose. Maybe it was this type of thing that messed up Leigh. Maybe Leigh saw that we, mankind, were becoming more brutal than those infected things down there, including us. Instead of working together, we were working against each other, stealing, raping, killing one another. We were becoming animals. Maybe we were becoming badgers, Chuck. I thought about that for a long time after that. It made me cry. What would my dad think about what Leigh and I had become? I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm sorry that this is what we've become, like everyone else. While those deadheads were chewing up those bastards, I decided it would be a good time to make a break for it. There was a small window in the hayloft that looked out onto a slanted tin roof that went down into a pasture. I went out the window and stood on the tin roof to check things out. The area was clear, nothing around the house either. So I was thinking that Ken and his group were okay. I went inside and seen that they hadn't even looted the place yet. I grabbed a large plastic garbage bag out of the kitchen and began putting food into it. There was a .22 lever action rifle above the kitchen doorway, and I strapped that around my shoulder. There was a box of shells in the kitchen drawer, but only 18 rounds. Better than nothing. June 9th. I camped out in the house. I reinforced the doors and I slept upstairs. That gave me the tactical advantage, as Dad would say. I'd be able to nail those things before they were able to get up the stairs. They had a hog pile and blocked the doorway for other things. I'm a little concerned because I haven't heard or seen any sign of Ken and his group. Did they make a break for the truck? Why didn't they check on us? That would have been awkward since I killed my group, but still. Random deadheads creep about the dooryard, but the pack has thinned. I feel pretty secure in here. It reminds me of the old pioneer farmhouse we hid out in with Dad. I may just make a home of this place. I've got plenty of food. I've got guns. Plenty of things around here I could make into weapons. It's hard not to get cocky, but I made it this far on my own. June 10th. I saw a campfire last night, way out in the middle of the cornfield. I found a pair of binoculars and tried to zoom in on the camp. But the tall corn and weeds messed up my line of sight. Tomorrow, I'm going to get out of here, somehow. June 11th. I found her. Leigh and Mr. Doble. It wasn't easy getting to them. I had to kill a few deadheads. I got lost in that maze of corn, and Leigh almost blew my head off, but instead of shooting me, she hugged me, and so did Mr. Doble. I told him everything that happened, from Mom getting killed to the island being taken over. I thought Leigh was going to explode, but she didn't. She just plopped on the ground and wept. I don't think I ever saw her cry that hard before. I comforted her the best I could. When everything got calm again, I asked her what happened to them. They said they were ambushed by the same crew that took over the island. Killed almost everyone in the scouts, including Nick. Leigh and Mr. Doble ran and hid in the corn. When our group came, Leigh noticed they were the same group that attacked them earlier, so they ambushed them when they got to the house, running from the horde of deadheads. I said I was almost part of that group, but decided to take the barn instead. They followed me back to the farmhouse and we ate a nice dinner. Doble said he was going to check around the sheds and see if he could find something for us to drive out of here. I told him there was a truck parked at the end of the drive, but he said that he and Leigh had sabotaged it. Leigh went upstairs to take a well-deserved nap. I used the opportunity to write this down. June 12th. Doble said there was a John Deere combine in one of the farm machine sheds. It was fueled up, and he thought he'd be able to start it. I asked him if he could even drive the thing, and he told me that he grew up on a farm, lived on that same farm, and raised his own family there. I was going to ask him where his family was, but judging by the look on his eyes when he talked about them, I didn't really want to know what happened to them. Food is getting low, and between all three of us, we don't have enough ammo to get through another horde or some other group of bandits. It only made sense to head north. We are going to pack up and head out in the morning. June 13th. Jeffers, Minnesota. We made it to a rock quarry near Jeffers, Minnesota. Not without trouble, though. We ran into a horde of deadheads just south of Storden, Minnesota. We had taken to the fields most of the way. We came into a cornfield and ran through several deadheads, which grinded up easily in the combine, but there were a lot of them, and they eventually began to clog up the head and the thresher. I was riding on the outside, picking off any that tried climbing up, while Leigh and Doble tried freeing up the parts. The hard part was getting the head cleaned out. Doble went down there to clean them off, while Leigh and I covered him. But we were only watching the outer perimeter. We weren't watching the actual head where he was at. So because of us, Mr. Doble got bit. It was a half-dead head. It had been sheared in half by the blades of the combine, but it was still alive and crawling around under the head. It made its way to his leg, and before he knew it, it was on him. It had climbed up halfway up his body and bit down into his back before he was able to knife it in the skull. Having cleared the combine and patching Mr. Doble up, we went forward until we reached this quarry. It was perfect. It had a central station up on stilts in the middle of a pond. Conveyors ran in different directions, stretching several feet to other minor stations. There were ladders to climb on each one. We drove the combine into the pond and up to the central station and unpacked all we had. The central station had only one entrance and a metal door. There was a stairway that spiraled up to a catwalk that went along the windows 360 degrees, with an outdoor catwalk as well, accessible by a small hatch. Mr. Doble told us that he wouldn't be joining us in there. I know I wasn't very keen on the idea, and Leigh began to cry because he knew, because he was like a dad to her. But he was infected, and he knew it would be a matter of time before the virus took over his brain, and he would be a danger to us. So he took a knife and said he was going to take the combine into town and try to find supplies. He said it may be his last scouting trip. He said he may not be back if the virus takes him. He hugged us both, gave us a kiss on our foreheads, and left. Leigh went up on the catwalk outside to watch him go. I curled up on my makeshift bed and wrote this. June 14th. Doble came back late last night. We went down to greet him, and it looked like hell. The veins in his neck were turning black, and his skin was getting ashy blue. He was coughing a lot, and it sounded wet inside his lungs. In a low, raspy voice, he said that the city of Jeffers was overrun with deadheads, but they didn't bother him because they could smell the virus in him. He had quite the load of supplies with him, more than a month's worth of food, charcoal, lighters, flashlights, batteries, bottled water, pens, notebooks, playing cards, board games, rifles, pistols, ammo, knives, bows, arrows, fishing poles, candles, kerosene, lanterns, and clothes. Clean clothes that were roughly mine and Leah's size. We tried to help him out, but he stopped us. He said that he was getting sicker and it was going to turn him soon. He said that he could feel it moving around in his head. I shivered at the thought of that. He said he was going to sleep in the cab of the combine. Checked on him this morning and he was gone. There was a puddle of black goo on the deck of the combine, but the cab was empty. Somewhere in the depths of that pond, Hank Doble was walking. Leigh and I went inside. We went out to the catwalk and decided to check out the other stations along the conveyors. It amazed me how far the conveyors reached and the complex system they used to deliver sand and gravel from one end to the other. Looking around, it seemed as if we were in a desert. The northeast station had a deadhead in it, but it was barely alive. It was so far gone that it was mostly just a skeleton with skin stretched across it in certain parts. When it saw us, it growled and tried to reach for us with its muscle-deprived arm. I said we should kill it, but put it out of its misery, and Leigh said no. that it wasn't up to us to decide the fate of one of those things. What a strange thing to say. July 4th. I know it's been a while since I've written, and this is going to be the last entry. The very last. You see, Leigh is gone. She's dead. We were going to try to dredge the pond for Mr. Doble so that we had a place to bathe, but when Leigh stepped down off the ladder and onto the roof of the combine, she slipped. It had been raining and the roof was wet. She slipped and fell into the pond. I jumped down a bit more carefully, but rushed to pull her out. She had a hold of the railing on the deck, but he got her. She gripped onto my arm, and I tried to pull her free, but Mr. Doble bit deep into her shoulder. She screamed in pain, and I pulled even harder, and he took another chunk out of her. She pleaded with me not to let her go, and for the love of God, I tried not to. I tried. I honestly tried. But he just kept eating her, and soon her grip just began to loosen. But those beautiful, deep brown eyes of hers just stared a hole into me. I'm so sorry, sis. I'm so fucking sorry. Please forgive me. Please. So I've been here, alone again, in this large, man-made desert. I have nobody left. So I'll put on my dad's bandana, and I'll eat one last meal. And then I'm going to end it. I'm going to put this .40 caliber in my mouth and pull the trigger. So whoever finds this journal, I hope you know that we are all human. Whether you find this and the world is worse, and people are killing each other for simple survival, or perhaps mankind will learn to work together again and rebuild what's left, just know that I tried to be decent. Know that mankind was not meant to be savage. I hope that the threat of these deadheads eventually die out, and mankind becomes good stewards of the earth again. But it's hard for me to believe in fairy tales anymore, in any happy endings. If I close my eyes, I can almost picture our old house. Mom and Dad, Leigh, me, and our dog Jack, sitting in the backyard with a fire going. Dad would be roasting marshmallows while Mom would put the s'mores together. I can almost hear the crickets in the yard and the frogs croaking in the swamp behind our house. Sometimes Dad would bring out his guitar and sing some silly song that he made up off the top of his head, and we'd all laugh and try to sing our own dumb verses. And that, my friends, is the end of that story. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and that is the end of the zombie saga and the end of Apocalypse Humpday, because we're going to take a break next week, and then the week after that we're going to be having it's going to be called Horror Humpday, and I'll be picking a short story out of a book, and we will read that every Wednesday night. So no more zombies. That's the end. Chuck's Badgers prevailed. So anyhow, I want to thank all of you guys for taking this huge long journey with me with the zombie apocalypse. We've been doing this for quite a while. It seems like we started in the winter. So much for sleep. I'm glad you thought it was good. Oh, thanks, Dale. I'm glad you liked it too, Dwayne. So anyhow, happening with me, with me and Steph, my band Eagle Lake is going to be playing Bike Night at Dave's Place on the 24th of July. That's on a Wednesday. It's in Lafayette, Minnesota. And I believe that starts at 6 o'clock. We'll be done it by 8. There's also going to be, we're going to be playing Music in the Park August 13th, and that's in the Winthrop City Park. If you're interested in coming out, it starts at 6 p.m., so it's August 13th. It's on a Tuesday. I will also be doing an author talk at the Winthrop City Library on August 22nd at, hey, Steph, August 22nd at 7 p.m. It's on a Thursday. I'm kind of nervous, but I'm kind of excited to do that. It should be fun. I get to talk to people, and they have to sit and listen to me because they chose to show up and listen to me. Kind of like this, right? Anyhow, but I want to give a shout out to Stephanie, who, as you all know, if you've watched the interview, she is an artist, and she paints a lot of things. She's got our house festooned with her creativity, and she is having an art show at the soon-to-be Winthrop Mercantile on 110 2nd Street here in downtown Winthrop, and that's on September 20th and also on the 21st. It's a 2-day event. You can show up for one of those. On Friday it's 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. and on Saturday it's 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. and she will be showcasing her artwork. Perhaps if you want to purchase some, come on out. If you want to just come out and appreciate it, that'd be awesome as well. And also meet the gal that created that stuff and the gal that captured my heart. And I will be there just sitting in a dark corner somewhere playing my guitar for some background music. I have to come up with 4 hours of music, evidently. So I don't know if we'll be playing for the full 4 hours, but I will be there playing some music. I think we'll have some beverages there and perhaps some things to nibble on. And hey, thanks, Chuck. You have a good night too, buddy. And Dwayne, you enjoy your evening. Again, hey, thanks, Shannon. That means a lot. We will be returning in 2 weeks for Horror Humpday. And yeah, I will create an event for that and blow up your email or your messenger thing. And when we start that, I think I'm still going to do Tunes for Tuesday next week. And that will be, I'm not sure who I'm going to be doing that on Tuesday. Perhaps Lemmy. I do owe Chuck a Lemmy. I do. I really do. So, anyhow, so yeah, we might still be doing Tunes for Tuesday next week. We'll see what's going on. The band and we need to get some practice down for our gig coming up here for Bike Night, and we're gonna try to do that as often as possible next week because there's a lot of stuff going on. There's the Winthrop Farm City Fun Fest is happening this weekend, and my friend Bobby talked Steph and I into serving chicken dinners or whatever on Sunday, so we're going to be doing that. And yeah, that should be fun or stuff like that. Anyhow, thank you guys so much for coming out. Chicken chucking, that's right. Thanks again though for traveling with me here through the zombie saga and listening to my stuff and listening to us play. It was fun last night. I got to play with Bobby and I got to play with Zoe, who both of them very talented people. Zoe's got a beautiful voice. It was good to have her on last night, singing a little Dolly Parton and singing along with us. So yeah, things get funner and funner, and shit just kind of happens when it happens, which is totally okay. I like riding the waves. So anyway, thanks everybody, and we will talk to you next week, I guess, sometime. Peace. That was a total online douchebag thing to do, but